I think this is actually really an important way for the conversation to go, because I think we need to unpack this whole European integration thing a little bit. We also need to unpack the Westphalian system. We have this ideal of Westphalia, which is centered on the notion of territorial sovereignty, and the sovereign, in theory, has absolute dominion over the land. But in fact, the Peace of Westphalia was predicated on concessions of sovereignty. We defined sovereignty territorially, but we immediately required them, the leaders of these sovereign areas, to announce what religion would be the predominant religion, and to create concessions to protect minority religions, where by minority religions we really meant only Judaism and other forms of Christianity. So there was a concession that was made to stop the wars of religion and to ensure that there would be some stability on the European continent. This notion of conditional sovereignty has always operated within the European Union. We talk about the Monnet-Schuman method and the idea of European integration as somehow interfering with national sovereignty, but in fact, if you look at the way EU legislation is implemented at the national level, then you realize immediately that national sovereignty has always been alive and well, and you can see it playing out in the approximation of EU laws and the success with which countries have avoided their responsibility simply by never writing the necessary legislation and or enforcing it. And this notion of conditional sovereignty also left open the possibility that governments would ignore things, just like Denmark ignored its commitment under Schengen. Mm-hmm. And doing that, they've always reasserted their sovereignty. We've seen that go back into the past. And yet, nevertheless, we have this myth of European integration that we adhere to. And when the reality doesn't approximate that myth, we believe that the reality has failed. But in fact, we've always had the same situation. The enlargement story fits into this as well. Remember, the initial push for enlargement that started in 1998 was a process that was designed to be absolutely as slow as possible. And it wasn't until June 1999 that the Cologne European Council Summit came out in its presidency conclusions with the insistence that they make the prospect of membership real for all candidate countries, followed in August by the Commission's introduction of the principle of differentiation to make the process as quick as possible. And the idea was, by doing this, to gain more control over what was going on in the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, to imply a conditionality without ever realizing that the conditionality would stop once they became members. Mm. And we see in Bulgaria and Romania today what are the full implications of that. Yeah. So enlargement was a temporary phase, an accession process. Membership is a permanent condition, and that permanent condition has always been a mix, a conditional sovereignty that's allowed these European countries to work together. And I don't think that's ever been different. Mm.